For those of you who are applying for the Silver Quality Award for the first time, I want to give you a little tip on how adjusting one single word in the Quality Award application can make the biggest difference. And I mean from understanding the expectations to not understanding the expectations hinges on one single word. My name is Ralph Peterson, and I am a Quality Award examiner and consultant, and I am so happy to be sharing this with you. Let's start at the org profile. This is P2B1. P2B1. The question is, what are your key strategic challenges, threats, advantages, and opportunities? Meaning, what are you facing? However, I want to invite you to consider making a very small modification that's going to have the biggest imprint on the application. Do this with me. Cross out the word are. Just cross out the word are and instead replace it with the word were. Now read the sentence. What were your key means most important, strategic challenges? What were your key strategic threats? What were your key strategic advantages? What were your key strategic opportunities? The reason this is important is because this application is a past view. It's asking you to show us what you've done in this year, or in the past 2 years, or in the past 3 years. Over the past 2 to 3 years, 1 to 2 years, what have you done? What were you facing, and how did you overcome it? That is a super helpful, and I hope you find it helpful, super important distinction to make, because oftentimes people will, when they're writing this application, especially if they're writing the application further into the end of the year, and they go like, well, what are we facing right now? They're going to start answering like, well, our current challenges are. And then when we get into the process sections, we're going to be going like, all right, hey, how did you solve those problems? 2.1b or 2.1c is where we're going to be answering, hey, what were our strategic objectives based on these strategic challenges? And then 2.2b, what were your action plans? And then about those strategic objectives, like how did you go, what were your decisions on, what were you going to do about it? And then in section 7, we're going to go, and the results are, and you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. I thought you asked me what are my problems? How could I solve a problem if I just told you what they were? I just identified them. I haven't solved them yet. That could be a big misnomer. So it's very important that you know that this is a past view application. We're asking you about all the things that you did in the past. There are a couple of future forward questions like 7.5, the charts and stuff. But let me give you another example. Let me just show you how this works. It goes like this. Imagine if I had a chart, a little graph, and the graph looked like this. And this is 2025. And these are quarters. So this is 4 quarters. So we see the trend line going from a high to a low. Well, we would call this just simply data. And data is great to collect, but it's not helpful, right? In order for it to be helpful, we have to add context. And once we add context, I'm going to say that this is false with injury. Now what we have is usable information, right? So data plus context equals information. In the application, it's like, what's the difference between data and information? The word is context. Context. Okay. So now you can see that if this is falls with injury, that we're tracking over the 4 quarters in 2025, this is now a positive trend. That's the kind of trend we want to see, right? We know that less falls is better. So that's a great positive trend. Well, let's imagine for a minute now that we extrapolate this graph backwards and we include 2024. And we have 4 quarters in 2024 that we're going to look at. And we would ask ourselves, what do you think, without knowing, just make a best guess, what do we think happened in 2024 or because we had the results of 2025. We know what happened in 2025. We had this positive trend. What can we guess happened in 2024? I'll show you. This is likely what happened in 2025 or 2024. We probably identified what we would call a negative trend. A negative trend, right? Because again, falls with injury, down is best. We're going up. And so something happened between 2024 and 2025. There's something magical happened, and it's not the change of the year, right? It's not that click at midnight. No. It's this dotted line, this often invisible dotted line, which we call an intervention line. Oh, an intervention line. This is when we intervened. Our QAPI team, our performance improvement team got in the way. We intervened. We're like, what? Falls with injury going up, not on our watch. And we work to get them down. Now, this application, the strategic challenge is saying, what were your strategic challenge? Not here, here. And you're going to be able to say, you know what? We identified a strategic challenge. My SC, we've identified a strategic challenge in 2024 that our falls with injury were going up. So what we did was we came up with a strategic objective let me just use arrows. This is an increase in falls. That's our strategic challenge. Our strategic objective is always the opposite. Anytime you have a challenge, the opposite is going to be your objective, right? So our strategic objective is to lower falls, right? And then there's a bunch of steps that we're going to follow. Like we're going to come up with a goal, a measure, like by how many falls do we want to reduce it by, a timeline. And then we're going to brainstorm like exactly what happened, do a root cause analysis, take into consideration who, what, when, where, why. And then we're going to brainstorm some possible interventions, and we're going to eventually come up with action plans. Action plans, the things that we're actually going to do, the interventions that we're going to implement, right? So now look at it like this. The strategic challenge, P2B1, is now answered. It's a past view, what happened last year or last quarter or last 2 years ago or 3 quarters ago. Then in 2.1c, we're going to identify the opposite of these challenges as our strategic objectives. Then in 2.2b, we're going to identify the action plans that we came up with that enabled us to have this positive result, which we're going to see in section 7. You see, the whole application is a past view. So when we're asking you, what are your strategic challenges? What we really mean to ask you is, what were they? What were they? And then from what your strategic challenge was, we had an increase in falls. What were your strategic objectives? Well, to reduce falls. If I said one of my strategic challenges, this year my turnover rate is too high, well, then my strategic objective would be to lower turnover rate, right? Strategic challenge, turnover rate too high. P2B1. Strategic objective, 2.1c, reduce turnover. My action plans, 2.2b, what did I do? What did I do? What did we do? We incentivized. We put out more recruiting ads. We partnered with a local school. These are the 3 action plans we came up with. And by the way, boom, guess what? We reduced our turnover rate or whatever, right? Like it's always P2B1 is going to equal 2.1c. It's always going to be the opposite of 2.1c. And then the action plans, the things that you did, past tense, you did to correct it, is in 2.2b, and the results of that correction is going to be listed in 7.1. I hope you found this super helpful. I'm going to give you one more quick little example. I'm just going to go to anyone here. 2.1c is perfect one. I just want to show you where this once again makes a big difference. 2.2d, all the last questions are learning questions. It says, how do you evaluate? No. I'm going to invite you to consider making a correction. Let's cross out the word do and add the word did. What did you do to evaluate and improve one of these processes you talked about in this specific area, 2.1. If we were talking about 1.1, then talk about 1.1. If we were in 5.1, you'd ask about 5.1. But you're going to tell us about a process that you already did evaluate and make improvements. And then you're going to tell us what those improvements were. And now it's better. And if there's any measure with it, we're going to want to see that where? In section 7. I hope you found this helpful. Again, my name is Ralph Peterson. I am a Quality Award examiner and consultant. And if you ever need any help with a Quality Award application, you reach out to me. I'll help. Talk to you soon.